So I think what I'll do in order to move from announcement stuff into the Word is start with a little story. That's what I'm going to do. And now, last week I had a video that I played for you. And this week I'm just going to tell the story, a story. And once upon a time, there was a cowboy. And this cowboy, he had his truck, he had a dog, he had a horse in the horse trailer, and life was good. And he's driving down the road, he's listening to Charlie Daniels' band, Devil Went Down to Georgia. He's having a great time. He comes flying around the corner, he's going way too fast, and he hits a patch of ice, and it's bad. I mean, the truck flips, and the horse trailer flips. I mean, it's a serious accident. It's bad news. And, he's mangled up pretty bad. He's in the grass, and he's looking up at the sky. What's going to happen? And all of a sudden he hears the siren, and he sees the lights, and oh, thank goodness, it's a cop. And the police officer pulls up behind. Well, it just so happens that this police officer is also a country boy. And so when he gets out and puts his cowboy hat on, and he comes up to the scene of this accident, the first thing he sees is the horse. And of course, the horse has got 2 broken legs. This is bad. I mean, he's a country boy. He knows exactly what you need to do with a horse with a broken leg. So he pulls out his service revolver, and he takes care of the horse's misery, puts the poor horse out of its misery. It was terrible. He feels bad about it, but, what can you do? So he comes around the corner, and here's the poor hound dog. I mean, the hound dog is all busted up, and I mean, it's just, the poor thing's whimpering, and breaks his heart. I mean, he's a country boy. He knows what to do with this. Uses his service revolver a second time and puts the poor dog out of its misery. And then he comes around the corner, and there's the cowboy. And the cowboy's in the grass. He's all mangled up, and the cop runs over and says, "Are you okay?" And the cowboy looks at that gun, and he says, "I'm doing just fine." How many of you know it's amazing how fast your perspective can change when it needs to? How many of you know that? You got that one? Can change, really. Yeah, your perspective can change. In fact, that's what this whole message is about. You see, we need to talk about our perspective. We need to understand how our perspective needs to change and how we can do it. And here's why. We've been studying the book of Exodus chapter by chapter and verse by verse. Why? Because that's what we do. Most Calvary chapels do the same thing. We go through the Bible chapter by chapter and verse by verse. And the reason we do that is because we want the whole counsel of God. And you never know what you're going to get when you go chapter and verse. That's the exciting part about chapter and verse. You never know what's going to be either. Now, I have confessed to you, the Lord and I are going to have a real discussion when I get to heaven. I'm going to say, "Lord, I'm not so sure about this because every time I preached a message, you made me live it first." It's so annoying. I'm sorry. I'm just being honest with you. It just really is sometimes. And this message is absolutely no exception. I had to learn a lot about perspective. I had to be reminded of a lot this week. And so I'm going to share it with you. Why don't we go to the book of Exodus, chapter 16, starting with verse 1. Now it says, "Then they," that is the children of Israel, the whole nation, "they set out from Elim." Now, if you remember last week, Elim is an oasis. It's got palm trees and springs of water. It's a nice place. They were resting there. And it says, "All the congregation of the sons of Israel," well, they came then to the wilderness. Now, it says of Sin. I'm going to get to that in just a second. "Which is between Elim and Sinai," the Sinai Peninsula, "on the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departure from the land of Egypt." So we're about a couple months into wandering in the desert. "The whole congregation of the sons of Israel, they grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness." And you're about to find out that they're grumbling about no food. That's what we're going to get to. But the thing that I want to key in on is the word sin here. It says they came to the wilderness of Sin. Now, some people, they want to try to read into that. They want to try to create some sort of analogy that really isn't there. And I'll tell you why. Because this word sin in Hebrew is actually sheen. That's how it's pronounced, sheen or seen. And it means thorn or clay. So it really has nothing to do with what you and I call sin, which is a violation of God's law, God's standards. It's not about that. It's a thorny, hard pan wilderness. It looks pretty nasty. It's not in a real happy place. It's here in the Sinai Peninsula, which is between the two arms of the Red Sea that you see there. This is a pretty serious desert. And I mean serious. You think you live in a desert? Nothing compared to this place. There ain't nothing there. It is just some thorn bushes occasionally and just this flat, ugly place. It is not pleasant. And that's where they were. And again, we look at it, we read the story, and I don't know about you, but my temptation is to look at it and go, how stupid can these people really be? I mean, didn't we just, in the last chapter, go through Mara, where the water was bitter, and they're complaining about this and complaining about that, and then God gets this tree, and it clears up the water, and it's sweet, and then, didn't they just see all the miracles going through the Red Sea? That was just a couple months ago. Didn't they just, and just a few months before that, they're coming out of Egypt with all the plagues. Didn't they see all this stuff? And they're grumbling and complaining about a lack of food. I mean, it's ridiculous. You look at it, and you want to come down on them. But remember what Hebrews tells us. The book of Hebrews tells us, yes, these stories are real events in real history. They really happened. There's a real people. This is not a myth. It's not an analogy. It really happened. But not only did it really happen, but God allowed it to happen and allowed the story to be recorded to teach us something today. There are principles here. There are things that you can look at and pull from this to teach you and I how to live for God today. So we need to look a little deeper. And so the first thing I thought of as I was looking at it is I went, not having food, that's a real problem. I mean, you're out in a desert called Sheen, where it's just this great big flat ugly place and a few thorn bushes. You're running out of food. Not having food is a real problem. Now, they had not, gotten to starvation level yet, but it was a real problem. And I think the first thing you and I need to realize, and I want to let you off the hook on this one. I'll let myself off the hook. The truth of the matter is, it's okay to have a need. Let me say that again. It's okay to have a need. I mean, you read this story and you want to get down on them for grumbling and complaining, but if you're honest, how many of you have had needs and you feel like grumbling and complaining? How many of you? Am I the only one that feels like grumbling and whining? Okay, well, good. I want to make sure I'm not preaching to the back wall here. Look, the truth of the matter is, I felt like grumbling and complaining this morning. Yeah, I admit it. I confess. I felt like grumbling and complaining last night for sure. Okay, and last week. In fact, I'm an expert at grumbling and complaining. Y'all have heard that I'm working on a doctorate degree. Did you hear that? Lord willing, I'll be done in the spring of 20. But I already have a doctorate in whining and complaining. I have a PhD in what it means, victimology. I'm telling you, man. I know I could write a dissertation on it and defend it. I know how to be a victim. I'm good at it. And some of you are too. I think you have 2 PhDs. But anyway, I think what we need to realize here when we read this story is, and rather than being critical of these guys, we need to figure out what they should have done. You see, this story is telling us, it's showing us how not to do it, so that we can learn how to deal with an issue like this, because you're going to have needs. You're going to have real problems. You're going to look out and there's going to be no food. You're going to look out and you're going to go, wait, man, I see a desert. I need a job and there's nothing. I need a financial miracle and I can't pay the bills. I mean, I've got a sickness and I don't see a way out of this. There's going to be real problems. Now, the question is, how will you deal with it when, not if, but when it happens to you? That's what we need to learn here. Because you see, this is all about the heart. Now, I want to talk about the heart for a second. We talked about what is your heart. Now, I had a funny incident happen in first service. I happened to, for those of you that didn't know, if you're new, I had a heart attack in 2017, and so they got me on this medication. So I got 3 stents in here. I even have warranties. I do. I have warranties. They're in my wallet. You know what I mean? In case they fail, I can sue or something. I don't know. Of course, if they fail, there's a problem. But anyway, I don't know what the warranty's for. But anyway, so I take this medication. I got to take it, and normally it doesn't bother me. But one of the side effects is severe dizziness. So I was right in the middle of preaching just before I said this, and I got hit with the dizziness. I thought I was going to fall right over. I had to grab hold of this, and I went, "Oh!" I mean, I had to stop for a second. And when I stopped, I said, "Give me a second," and I drank some water, and I was silent for about 15 or 20 seconds, going, "Okay, is this going to pass, or am I going to cut the message short?" But it went away, and I feel I'm fine. Don't worry, don't panic. But here's the thing. I thought, right in the middle of the message, I said, "Why did you allow this, Lord?" I mean, normally, if I get a dizzy spell, it's at night, because I take the medication at night. That's the point. You take it at night, so in the morning when you get up, you're fine, But it occurred to me that when I stopped the message, what did everybody do in their heart? It was silent. But was it really silent? Not up here. Everybody was talking in their hearts. I mean, everybody was. Everybody was going, "Is he okay? Is he going to fall? What? Okay, I think he's just making it up so he can get sympathy. I just don't, Okay, right? Everybody had a little narration going through their head. I mean, even now, as I'm talking of this, some of you are going, you're talking to yourself. Do you hear it? Somebody say yes. Yes. That's your heart. If you didn't know, that's your heart. Your heart is that little narration voice that you have, that you hear. It's that place where you reason, where you evaluate a situation, and you're going to come up with, well, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And sometimes, if you're honest, you're even saying to yourself, well, what should we do? You've probably done that. How many of you have actually done that? You've had an argument with yourself and you're going, well, what should we do? Sometimes you'll say, what should I do? And the other part of you goes, well, I wouldn't. And you're going, wait a minute, there's 2 eyes here. Okay, listen, you schizophrenic weirdo. You are normal. You are created in the image of God. He is 3 persons in one being. You are one being. You also are in that image. And you can argue with yourself, and your body's just hanging out going, what are we going to do? Okay? Now, you see, but you are not 3 individual beings. You are one being. You are made in the image of God. So if you wanted to understand Father, Son, Holy Spirit, there it is. You just you look in the mirror, okay, because you're made in the image of God. So your heart is that part of you that's evaluating. Now listen to me about the heart, because these guys have a heart problem. We need to learn something about it. You see, they had a heart problem, and your heart is where you develop your perspective on things, on life, on what's going on this church, on whether or not you like the chair you're currently sitting in. You're going to be evaluating. That's where you get your perspective. Now, your heart can develop habits, the habits of the heart. Now, they can be good habits or bad ones. And you can develop bad habits of perspective, bad habits of the heart. You can get hang-ups of the heart, where you're totally hung up on all your personal problems, where you're totally hung up on your past, where you're hung up on your anxiety for the future, where you're hung up on not feeling loved, where you're hung up on not feeling honored and respected. Whatever, you can get hang-ups. You can also focus your heart on your hurts. When you focus your heart on your hurts, when you get hung up on where you've been damaged in life, you can develop the habit of trying to hide from that pain. Yeah. Now, we in CR understand hang-ups, hurts, and habits, don't we? That's what it's all about, is learning how to not let those things rule us. We're going to turn those things over to Yeshua, our higher power, and we're going to get the power to transcend that. And that's what this is all about. We've got to learn how to change our perspective. Now, these people had developed a real habit, a real hang-up, and that was a complaining heart. But before you're down on them, recognize the fact that this is common to human nature. A complaining heart is common. But my friends, it's not inevitable. There's some people that think it is. Now, do you remember the video we showed last week? Do you remember the lady? She's standing there, she's doing the fallback thing with Jesus. And then she's standing and looking at him, and he says, okay, fall back. And she's like, well, there's nobody behind me. I can't do that. And he goes, trust me. That's only the way it looks to you. Fall back. She would not do it. Do you remember that? Now, that was pretty powerful. It shook some people. I heard later that really shook them. But if you think about it, that's what a complaining heart is based on. What it's based on is this idea that because I can't see what's going to happen, because all I can see is my past hurts. All I can see is how life has never gone my way. Why it's always been, I've always had this problem. I've always failed here. I've always failed there. And when you get wrapped up in that, listen to me, you will become irrational. That's what happens to these people. You will become irrational. Now, my friends, a complaining heart is not inevitable. But most people think it is because they look back like that woman and they see all these, well, that's real. I was really victimized. I really was bullied when I was a kid. I really did have this go wrong and that go wrong. And you can look at that and you go, those are facts. That's evidence. And I'm big into facts and evidence. But the problem is you get your focus on all of that. And when you get your focus on all of that, you think it's never going to get better. You can't see a way out. And you think it's absolutely necessary for you to walk around with this big black cloud over your head all the time about how awful everything has always been for you. And the only reason that I can talk about this with such clarity is because everything I just described is me. When I was a young man, I was an absolute expert. I had been bullied. I was the weird kid. I was all those things. So I began to believe the lie that everybody doesn't like me. Now, when you believe that lie and you think about it, you focus on that victimology all the time. I would literally walk into a room and I had in my heart, everybody doesn't like me. I haven't met a person, I haven't talked to a person, but I walked in the room, I had this, and it's going to be projecting from me. I didn't even realize that I'm going to have a big chip on my shoulder and that I'm going to misinterpret every word and every look that comes my way because I'm already convinced that nobody likes me. And guess what? They didn't like me. Why? Because I'm being a toad. And then I would feel it. They would react to my attitude. And then I go, see, knew it. They don't like me. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It makes you, listen, when you have a complaining victim heart, you get irrational. Look what they did. They get irrational. The sons of Israel said to them, Moses and Aaron, would that we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt. What a ridiculous thing to say. You've been rescued from an evil empire with great miracles. You've been come out with gold and silver and everything. You've had water being given to you. I mean, everything's happening for you, but you're going, wow, I wish I had died. What a ridiculous, irrational thing to say. And then it says, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread to the full, for you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. It's irrational, it's unthinking, it's dumb. It's also human. Because we do that. Listen, a complaining heart, it focuses on the need. And when you focus on the need, I said the need was real. It's okay to acknowledge that there are real needs. There are things you want to complain about. That's okay to have a need, but how do you react to it? If you focus on the need, you're going to end up with a sense of I've been victimized. It's really envy, because what you're really saying is, well, it always goes good for him, always goes good for her, always goes, back when we were in Egypt, it was better there. And you start focusing, listen, you start focusing on the high in the past, not the low. You forget all about the low. And the reason you do that is because you're trying to support your complaint in the moment. You know, guys do this a lot. Well, you know, other guys have wives, let them go off hunting and fishing all the time. You know, other guys have better jobs than mine. I always get the low thing. I'm always at the bottom. Other guys, right? Women can do this. Well, you know, other husbands are nicer. They clean and they do things, and, you know, they actually wash a dish, you know. I mean, oh, I can't believe it, you know. And you start this victim thing because you're focused on the need. It's a heart problem. You're focused on the need, and it's envy, and it's evil. It's human nature. And I'm here to tell you, listen, if you allow your heart to continually focus, if you get in the habit of being focused there, if that's your hang up, you're focused on what's wrong, you're focused on what's going bad, even if that's a fact. I'm not saying they're not facts, because it's easy to look at it and go, well, that's a fact. So what? It's also a fact that the living God said that if you put your trust in him, you'll never be put to shame. It is also a fact that Jesus said, in this life, you will have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the whole world. It is also a fact that if you put your trust in the living God, he'll straighten out your way. He swore by himself. There's nothing higher to swear by, that if you put your trust in him, he's going to guide it. He's going to straighten it out. That's a fact. And that fact transcends whatever other fact that you got going on. It is also a fact that God said, you put your trust in me, you might have trouble in this life, but when you check out of this world, I'm going to make everything right. Everything. There'll be no shadow. There'll be no memory of evil. There will be no tears. There'll be streets of gold. I've got everything set for you. You put your trust in me. What are you worried about all this stuff here on this life? Even death itself, I've defeated it already. That's the facts. You know, I think about Corrie ten Boom. How many of you remember Corrie? You've heard of Corrie? Okay. Corrie and her sister Betsy, and along their family, they were taken to Ravensbrück, which was a concentration camp in Germany during the war, during World War II. Corrie told the story about her sister Betsy. She said, you know, for a long time, basically what she's saying is, I thought that Betsy was just nuts. Because Betsy was always looking at everything with a different perspective. We're in hell. People are dying. We're in the queue to be gassed to death. There's no escape. And yet Betsy was looking around to say, oh, isn't that sunset so lovely? And Corrie was looking at her like, are you crazy? Do you not see where we are? And Betsy would say, do you not see where we're going? She had a different perspective. And one day, Betsy was saying to Corrie, you've got to get a different perspective. You've got to see past this. She was sick. Betsy was dying and knew it. But from her perspective, she's just going home. And she said, Corrie, let's thank God for the fleas and the lice. And that's when Corrie said, look, you're off the edge. That's it. We're not thanking God for, I'm not doing it. But Betsy said, Corrie, come with me. And so she very reluctantly went, okay, fine. Thank you, God, for fleas. Yay. Thank you, God, for lice. Wonderful. You know what I mean? She said it was very half-hearted prayer, trust me. But the next day, she was out in the yard, and she just so happened that Corrie spoke German, so she heard the guards talking. And lo and behold, the guards were saying to one another that they never go into the barracks because of the fleas and lice. And it was in that moment that she realized, wow, we can do whatever we want in this barracks. They're never coming in here. So they did. They started Bible studies right under the thumb of the Nazis. They're doing Bible studies and leading people to Jesus before they checked out of this miserable world. And that's when Corey said, I understood, thank God, for the fleas, for the lice. And later, she said, there is no pit so deep that his love is not deeper still. Man, that just gets my heart. You see, if you allow your heart to focus on your need and on your problem and on your past, instead of focusing on the God who promised, who swore by himself, he said, I have conquered the grave. I swear I will guide you. I swear I will direct you. I swear if you put your trust in me, says God, I'll take you to heaven. And if you get your focus there, it's going to change. But if you don't, you will get a selective memory. You're going to forget about the emptiness and the bondage and the pain of your past life, and you're going to start focusing on, well, how good it was back there. The highs and the lows. And you know what's worse? It becomes a cycle. Because it becomes a habit, a hang-up. It goes like this, and your heart, your perspective is so back there, so I'm such a victim, that you fall into depression. And then when you get depressed, you naturally get angry. Anger is always a secondary emotion. It's a knee-jerk. Always a secondary emotion. You get depressed, you get mad. Who are you mad at? This story is saying, you think you're mad at your circumstances. You think you're mad at the influential people in your life, your leaders, or your husband, or your wife, or your boss, or your parents. You think you're mad at them, but you're really mad at God. Because it is God who directs your steps. It is God who has allowed your situation. It is God who has decided when to intervene in your situation and when not to. So the truth is, when you have that complaining heart, you're really complaining at him. Now that's heavy. That's heavy. So what's the solution? The solution is to intentionally grow a grateful heart, like Betsy had. That's a very big part of real Christian growth is understanding that I have to cultivate that kind of a heart. That's a new habit. It's a new action on my part where I'm going to intentionally choose to do this, to cultivate that, to get in a new habit of gratitude and to intentionally work on that. This is why it says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 15, look at what it says. It says, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. How many of you want the peace of Christ to rule in your heart? Okay? Now, it says you're indeed called to this. You're called as one body. You're supposed to connect in that peace and be thankful. Now, that's not an add-on. Let me explain why. Because the word let here in verse 15 and 16 in Greek, it means to allow. And in fact, the verses here, it comes out in English kind of a little bit garbled. What this really means is, basically, if you want the peace of Christ to rule in your heart, because that's what indeed you're called to, you got to be thankful and allow the word of Christ to richly dwell within you with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with, say it, thankfulness. So that wasn't loud enough. Say it again. Thankfulness. In your hearts to God, whatever you do. Now, whatever does cover whatever. Whatever you do, in word and in deed, you do it all in the name of the Lord Yeshua, giving thanks through him to God the Father. You see it 3 times, thanks. Now, what's he saying here? He's saying, look, the antidote to have the peace of Christ rule in your heart. Well, from your heart, you've got to be grateful and joyful. And that's a choice you got to make. And you got to do it in whatever you're doing, even if it's living in a concentration camp. Whatever you do. Betsy understood that. How many of you are looking forward to meeting her someday? Amen. It's going to be fun. A thankful heart is what leads to the peace of God. It's a thankful heart if you allow that to rule, that kind of a habit, that kind of a choice, even when you don't feel like it, that's what's going to change your circumstance. Now, I'm going to give you an example from my own life. Because remember, God never lets me preach a message that he doesn't make me live it some way first. So last week, I was reminded by various different circumstances and comments that were made. I was reminded of the many things I'm not doing well. There are many. And it came over me. I'm not finishing stuff that I start. And then I started down this path of, well, I could do better here and I could do better there. And it started coming over me. I'm not spending enough time with my kids in their homeschool stuff. It's just like I'm so busy. I'm letting them do. And I start going down this path of I'm not doing this well. I'm not doing that well. I'm not leading well. I'm constantly missing things. There's people problems all over the place. And I started going down this path. And then it got worse. I began to think, so what that I started following the, debt-free lifestyle crud? Yay. I got no debt except for my house. I also have no retirement, no medical, and I'm 51. Why didn't I do that when I was 21? And I start beating myself to death. And it becomes a spiral. Like I'm going down a drain. And I felt depression creeping up on me like a monster in the dark. And I thought, I don't set good boundaries. I'm frantic all the time. I'm running around. I never get anything done. And it started coming down. If I keep leading the church like this, it's going to crash. And da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I sat down in my chair in the dark. And I'm starting to feel depressed. And then I'm starting to feel angry. Why have I sacrificed so much to do this, and I haven't got this? And it started coming to me, and then I went, what am I doing? And in that dark, quiet moment, I swear to you, I heard the voice of God. Amen. And God very, very gently said, what are you doing? And I sat there and I thought about it. And I went, well, these are facts, this is all true. And I'm telling you, I swear I can see God laughing at me. Because he goes, what do I got you preaching this weekend? And then it hit me. He never lets me go through and preach a message to you that he doesn't make me suffer through it first. And I went, oh, I see it. And he said, so what are you going to do? And so I started to be thankful. I didn't want to, trust me. I got depression bearing down on me like a freight train. The facts didn't change just because I changed my perspective. But I'll tell you, my heart did, because I started with shoelaces. If you can thank God for your shoelaces, this is a good place to start. Amen. But I did because I've been to a country where people don't have shoes. They don't have shoes. I'm going to Haiti in the 28th. They don't have shoes. We watch the kids running around over thorns with bare feet. And I began to thank God for everything I could think of. And I started thanking God for the silly chair I'm sitting in because it's comfortable. And I started thinking about this and thinking about I even have a dog I'm thankful for. And which is amazing because I don't like them. But, I started thinking. I just started over and over. Thank you for this. Thank you for this friend. Thank you for this. Thank you for that. And after a while, I'm getting all fired up about all the good stuff that I got. And then I got up out of my chair. I started marching around the chair like this. God, you're awesome because you did this. You're awesome because you did that. And all of a sudden, I'm jumping. I'm feeling good. 20 minutes ago, I'm on the edge of a cliff. Depression's bearing down on me. None of the circumstances changed. My perspective did. And all of a sudden, I got fired up about how awesome our God is. And my depression blew away like smoke in the wind. You want the peace of God? There it is. You want the peace of God to rule in your heart? That's what you got to do. They didn't. Look what God does. Verse 4. Then the Lord said to Moses, well, behold, I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you. And the people, they're going to go out and they're going to gather a day's portion every day. Here it is, that I may test them whether or not they're going to walk in my instruction. Now listen, God's going to provide for them, but there's a test here. Remember what a test is. We put the metal in the fire, we get it all hot, we burn off its impurities, we pound on it, make it stronger. So this is a test. I'm going to explain why it's a test in just a second. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it's going to be twice as much as they gather daily. That way they're going to have one day off. So Moses and Aaron, they said to all the sons of Israel, at evening, you're going to know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. In the morning, you're going to see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your grumbling against the Lord. And what are we that you're grumbling against us? He's making the point. Your grumbling is not against the leaders. It's not against life. It's against God himself. And he says, God's going to prove you. He's going to test you. Why? Because this is going to sting. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you've been complaining and moaning about something, and all of a sudden the solution walks in the door, or just bam, it's right there in front of you, and you go like this? How many of you have ever been there? Am I the only one? You feel sheepish? This is exactly what's happening here. God is going, I'm going to solve your problem. I'm going to solve it right in front of you, and I'm going to prove that you've been believing lies. I'm going to prove the truth, that if I really want to destroy you, said God, you think I would have to drag you out to the desert to starve you? I could have done that back at the Red Sea. And I'm going to prove to you by solving your problem that you have been accusing me falsely, is what God is saying. He's also going to prove, listen to me, and this is really important. He's proving by doing this that it wasn't Moses that brought them out of the land of Egypt. Now, I'm going to tell you why this is really important. I'm going to kind of connect all these dots together, because there's some principles here that you and I need to understand. The principle is that God provided for them, but he gave them instruction on how to get that provision. Did you see that? Later, you're going to find out that the manna come up in the morning. They had to go get it before the sun rose, or it would melt. So if they don't go out and get it, they ain't going to get it. Make sense? And they had to go out early, but here's the other thing. They had to go get it. See, God will provide for you. Here's the principle. God will provide for you, but you got to go do. And people miss this part. There is a really bad teaching out there. And you will find, if you're new here, that I have a real problem with the Word of Faith movement and that whole blab it, grab it, name it, claim it nonsense out there. It's unbiblical. It's ungodly. It is wrong every which way that you can think of. God is not a slot machine in the sky. He's not a genie that you rub a bottle and say the right magic words and you're going to get whatever you want. That's not how it works. You want to know how I know? Not only do I have the Word of God, but I have what he has made. Look at these birds. When you see birds, God said he was going to take care of the birds. You don't see these birds sitting out there with those beaks open going, worms. No. Drop them. You said you would provide, man. No, they don't do that. They go look for the worm. Yes. Okay, now this is important. Because we get into a situation where we have a legitimate need, and God is expecting us to act on the opportunities that he opens up for us. Many people complain loudly about their life, about how it's so awful and my situation is so bad. Now, this is really funny on the one hand and not so funny on the other. People come up and they do that kind of complaint, and you look at them, or I look at them, and I say, well, have you prayed about that? And people get so angry when you say that. Have you ever noticed that? Have you prayed about it? They get mad. They get annoyed. Don't give me some spiritual answer. Well, have you? Well, no. Or worse, they'll say, well, yeah. Really? Have you prayed? Well, once. Okay, look, dude. Jesus said, you want to know how to pray? This is what Jesus said. He said, I'll give you an example. There once was a lady, and she was dealing with an unjust judge. And this guy, he didn't give justice to nobody. He was corrupt as could be. But this girl, she goes out and she's pounding on his door. Give me justice. And she pounded on the door and pounded on the door, drove him nuts. And he finally said to himself, look, I don't listen to God. I don't listen to people. I do what I want. But I'm going to give this lady justice, not because of her, but because she's just annoying. She's going to wear me out. I'm going to give her just to get her off my back. And Jesus said, that's how you pray. That's how you pray. So if you got a situation in life and I come up to you and I say, do you pray about it, and you get annoyed, that's because you're convicted, because you ain't praying the way you need to pray. You need to pray, and then you need to pray again, and you need to press in prayer, and then you need to go back and pray again. And you're praying about it, but you don't stop there. You go and do. You go and do. Because people come up to me and say, well, I need a better job. Life is this and life is that. Well, have you looked for a job? Well, I did once. Okay, look, you want to get a better job. You pray until your knees are worn out, and then you get out there and you pound the pavement until God opens up a door. But if you just stand there like some bird sitting on a tree limb going, give me worms, you're not going to get nothing. That's not how God works. The test is, I'll provide. What are you going to do? You see, that's what's going on here. That's the principle. This is important. God expects you to act on that opportunity. So look what happens next. Verse 8. So Moses said, this is going to happen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening and bread to the full in the morning, for the Lord hears your grumbling, which you grumble against him. And what are we? Your grumblings are not against us, but against the Lord. And then Moses said to Aaron, look, say to all the people, all the congregation of the sons of Israel, come near before the Lord. He has heard your grumbling. And it came about, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the sons of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I've heard the grumblings of the sons of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. Yes. You know what's beautiful about this? You know what the principle is here? What I find fascinating is that God provided for them without demanding that they shut up first. Did you notice that? He provided for them without demanding that they knock it off and quit grumbling. In fact, he acknowledges their grumbling 4 different times here. Why is that? Because God's love is so beautiful, so deep, so perfect, that he is willing to put up with my immaturity and yours too. He's willing to take care of you and me, even when we're just so busy whining we can't see the fact that it's a flat miracle we're even alive at all. That's how much God loves you. He was willing to die for you when you were still a sinner. When you hated God, he sent his servants to find you in the dark. You know what faith is, my friends? It's shutting down your complaint. It's shutting down your grumbling because you decide to believe from your heart that God has the right to rule in your life. And if he has the right to rule, then that means he has the right to decide when you live and when you die. He has the right to decide when to intervene and how to intervene in your situation. And if he chooses not to, your job is to be thankful and grateful to your last breath. And if you choose that kind of faith, that's what pleases God. Because remember what he promised. You put your trust in him, he'll give you eternal life. The truth is, you and I need to understand a powerful truth. When we grumble and we complain about life, you're really grumbling and complaining about God himself. It is a nasty, dangerous habit to get into, and it's also ridiculous. Because it's like a flea arguing on the back of a dog which way his dog should go. That's how small you are in comparison to history. You are not sovereign over your own life. Trust me, I found that out. When they saw the glory of the Lord, reminded them that it was God that led them out of Egypt. It was God that's providing, not the people. And this is where, if you get nothing else, get this. The truth of the matter is that when you get focused on your problems, on your needs, on your hang-ups, instead of focused on Him, instead of being grateful and trusting Him to straighten out your way, the way it says in Proverbs chapter 3, when you get focused there, you get irrational. And you begin to put a pressure on the people of influence in your life as if they are supposed to solve your problem. You start looking to people to give you what you should be looking to God to give you. Now, this happens in marriages all the time. Look, I've read Ephesians chapter 5. I know what it says. It says, husbands, love your wives the way Christ loved the church. Why? Because there ain't a woman on the planet that doesn't desperately desire to feel loved. All women have a desire, because God made them this way, they want to feel beautiful. They want to feel loved. That's why they're into princess things when they're kids, okay? And Barbies and stuff. It's because they want to be beautiful. They want to be loved. They're desperate for it. And when they don't feel it, it's like they can't breathe. There's not a woman on the planet that doesn't feel that way. That's why Ephesians 5 says, husbands, figure this out. Love your wives. But I have news for you. He will never love you enough. He can't. He's not God. Quit putting this expectation. Look, if God is willing to listen to the grumbling and complaining of His people and willing to come through for them, even when they don't deserve it, how much more should you and I be willing to give grace and room to the people in our lives who are not God? Your husband will never be able to love you enough. Your connection must be with Him first before it's here with anybody. You got to go, you know what? I'm going to find what I need in Jesus. I'm going to find what I need in my connection with Him through thankfulness, through singing those songs and hymns and spiritual songs in my heart, through meditating on His Word and embrace. That's what Colossians 3 tells me. That's what I'm going to do, says the wife, so that whatever love I get from my husband is just gravy. But you know, I've also read Ephesians chapter 5. It says, wives, see to it that you respect and honor your husband. And boys, there's not a girl in this room, there's not a girl on the planet that is going to be able to be the super wife that you're daydreaming of. It ain't going to happen. Because she is not God. Say it with me. She is not God. Quit looking to a woman to be beautiful enough for you, to make your food enough for you, to let you go hunting enough for you. Ain't going to happen. You be good. Quit looking to your wife to be God to you. You're going to feel disrespected. I guarantee it. Because you're living with a sinner like you. Look for what you need. Connect here before you connect here. And if you focus your attention on your King, boys, then you're going to find the honor and respect and admiration that you're looking for. Because He doesn't see your flaws. He washed them away with His own blood. He doesn't see your flaws. She does. He doesn't. And she'll remind you. And when that happens, you need to go back to your King. Quit trying to make your wife into God. She isn't. And that's the key. Look, if you didn't get anything else out of this whole passage, I hope you got this. And here's the key. Take a look at it. What is the antidote to a complaining heart? It's right there in front of you. It's a grateful heart. The antidote to a complaining heart, the solution to the depression and fear that you're trying to fight off, it's a grateful heart. That's a new habit. And when you intentionally look to God to meet all of your physical needs, all of your emotional needs, all of your spiritual needs, instead of looking to people, putting unrealistic expectations on people, on pastors. I'm not God. I flat guarantee you, I'm going to let you down. You've known me a long time. Have I let you down? Say yes. Yeah. Have I offended you, Pastor Doug? Amen. Amen. I ain't God. But people want to put me up on this little pedestal like I'm something else, and I'm not. I'm just a guy like you. Follow me as I follow him. We're just following him. We're going to do it together. Now what I want you to do together, you got to help me out. We're going to sing a song. Let's stand and let's close it out. Now, I picked this song. Where's the microphone that I'm going to use? Where'd it go? Yeah, can you bring it over here for me? Now, I picked this song on purpose. It's an old song. I like some of the old ones. How many of you like the old ones? Amen. Now, I like the old ones because sometimes they really, thank you, they really say it in a way that you couldn't say any other way. You know what I mean? Yes. Boy, this is, okay, here we go. I got to use the regular mic instead of this one because they need to help me with singing. So, some of the old songs are really good because like this one, it says, "Come thou fount." A fount is water. Water in the desert. Life can be a desert. It says, tune my heart. What? To sing your grace, right? To be focused on gratitude. Because streams of mercy never ceasing call for songs of loudest praise. So teach me some melodious sonnet sung by the flaming tongues above. And it says, praise the mount, I'm fixed upon it. I've got my focus on him. So let's just sing a couple, 3 verses of this and call it a day. Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy praise. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mountain fixed upon it, mount of thy redeemed. Father God, we come before you in Jesus' name. And we're fixing our eyes on you, the mountain of your goodness. We're going to learn the habit of putting our praise and our worship your direction, especially when we're facing depression and anger and fear. Because you're the source. If we do that, it'll defeat those things. You know, an Ebenezer, if you didn't know, is a stone. It's a big stone. It's usually several tons. And they would put it up on the top of a hill. And it was there so that they could look at it and remember what God had done. Just so you knew. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to a latter end. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He too saved me from danger, interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace and greater debtor, daily I'm constrained to thee. Let thy grace flow like a flood, bind my want Seal it for thy courts above. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it. Seal it for thy courts above.